Let's take a few minutes to talk about kind of the issues that we as designers, architects, and other interior designers have with respect to what things we have responsibilities and control over. So the first image is obviously this idea of looking at the features of the design of the interior of the car. It's a very big industry. Modernization of older elevators and lobby reconfigurations always involve architects and the idea of creating interiors that match the design intent of the rest of the facilities is very important. So we have this idea of working on the car itself. And also, as I've said before, this idea of the integration at floor levels of what could be corporate identification or building identification systems. So a lot of attention, a lot of cost and value, because elevators are expensive parts of the building core. A lot of money and attention is spent to these main circulation areas within buildings. So these are two primary, the interior elevator design and layout and the lobby crafting are really focal points for architectural design work. This is a hyperlink to some requirements for ARE, for licensing about placements of elevators, spacement, the spacing between car groups, and this is hyperlinked, so this will take you to some presentations, and I believe there is a designer sheet, which is the one that's illustrated in this graphic here. So these are, I invite you to click through and read some of the details on these issues. Now, there are ideas about, this is out of our textbook, really kind of a sad visualization of elevator design being in black and white. Um, but I put this in here to remind you that there's going to be a lot of issues about safety and informing the occupant of where the elevator is, the signal systems, how they look, what their presentation is, how that matches with um, the theme and the concepts of the building. So are all places for designers to participate in activities. Some are required to be certain ways just for code, so labeling systems, but other times architects have opportunities to intervene and control the way certain things look. But we also have obviously responsibilities to accessibility, the ADA standards for the placement and height and location, the incorporation of Braille systems for vision impaired, Braille in both the sizes of our lettering, the locations from the floor, um, the idea of audible floor enunciation, all of these things, I mean, obviously minimum door widths, hold open times for how quickly somebody moves through. Many of these are guided by code, but you should also be aware that these are things that are sometimes set by the performance of the elevator, and they're in conflict. Hold open times, slow down travel between floors. So there's always a conflict between trying to move fast and trying to provide high levels of accessibility. Um, the location of the door affects how accessible the elevator is. This is sometimes reflected in the code and meeting the goals. So if you see here, the size of the elevator, in order for it to have a centered door, requiring more space. So some some thought needs to go into your decision about the placement of the doorway with respect to the elevator car itself when you're planning these projects out. And another issue is this kind of the human interaction with elevator systems. The idea of being able to visualize somebody coming and going and getting out of their way. A 3 foot minimum entry to an elevator for a person is really quite small. We think that, well, you can get a wheelchair through, but when we start to mix that up with many people moving, these 3 foot would be considered a really undesirable tight amount of space that we would find uncomfortable. So obviously that's a real short shift on the ideas of accessibility, but just keep in mind they're guided by code. You need to review those codes. You need to give thought about all of the placement of these elements when you're modeling them, when you're making considerations or determinations about the way they're going to visually appear. You need to give a lot of thought to the placement of doors, how that's going to affect cab size and accessibility, and to be more generous probably than the minimums for creating a comfortable egress and efficiency in transfer between the elevators. So we'll wrap things up at the end with a little look at escalators and some other kinds of vertical transportation systems next.